what we're going to be talking about today in my section is about building better relationships. So when I think about building better relationships, I try to think about what would make customers come back time and time again. I try to think about, as a business, what elements cause people to remain with us, but also talk to us. Now, we're all experts in our field, and we've worked hard to be the best at what we do, but does that actually translate to how we work with our clients? So we might be great at creating amazing products. However, if we take too long to get back to someone, or we don't listen to what is actually needed, then will people go elsewhere? Or if a customer wants to talk to someone about a problem, how can we react effectively and resolve the matter in a timely manner? So in that respect, I always think of four key areas. One is quality of product and user experience. Two is delivering on the promise. Then I think about resolving problems. And then I think about the after-sales side of things. But I also think about externally, who do I deal with that I respect in this circumstance? So who kind of provides good customer service, and why do I go back to them time and time again? Now, for me, I think of Booking.com for all of my accommodation needs, and the reason I think of those is from the point of view of the quality of the product and user experience. I can easily book a room, so I can go onto the website and actually look up on a map, find out the room size, the standard of the room, and if I've never visited that city before, then it just gives me a really easy overview of what I need to see. From delivering on the promise, is it actually cheaper to book via them, or is it just purely a convenience thing? So for example, I know that if I book directly with the hotel, then I'll actually get a better price for it, but it's more convenient because I can see everything all in one place to choose. Now, in terms of resolving problems, they are fantastic at rectifying issues. So they always put the customer first, and they always deal directly with the actual accommodation to sort things out. So for example, I was in KL and my accommodation couldn't get hold of the person, so they tried to get hold of them and they couldn't, so they just booked me a new place which was the same or above the price. So I always trust them from that point of view. But in terms of after sales, I would say that they have too many notifications for my liking. So you receive 3 bookings to start off with. Say you book your room, then you might receive another 2 to say here are some vouchers, you're getting ready for your trip, and then after you've visited, you then get about 2 or 3 more that say, will you review the accommodation? Now that to me is a little bit of death by email and kind of draws away from the whole kind of experience. Now, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about this segment, which is to do with resolving problems, and I'm going to talk about how MYOB Acumatica can potentially help with that. And what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to actually talk about the support and the returns process within the system. So we're going to talk about cases first. So how can we create cases to start off with? Then I'm going to talk about case assignment, so how can we assign cases to people, and also things like notifications of sending messages or sending emails through to the relevant internal and external people. And then we'll jump into returns. So we do have return order types in the system, so I'm going to mention about those, and then how we actually process and go through those order types and that actual process. And then we'll talk about the closing the loop. So from the point of view of once we've finished everything off and shipped everything, how do we wrap everything up and notify the client from that point of view? So to start off with, we're just going to talk about case creation. So there are 4 methods I see in terms of case creation within MYOB Acumatica. The first one is we actually have a customer portal. So you can actually set up contacts. The contacts can be linked to the customers, and then they can actually go in and log their own support cases. Now, MYOB, case in point, actually allow the business partners to log their support cases directly using this portal, and Kilimanjaro Consulting also do the same kind of thing. So it just puts the onus back on the clients and they can see and do whatever they need to. Now, external integration. So this is things like if you're using an external system to log certain things, log information coming in. So for example, if you've got something like HubSpot, which is logging a whole heap of tickets, and then anything that needs escalating might actually trigger to push that into Acumatica, or send an email through, and then that filters through and creates a new case. So we can have an external integration feed that in. We also have an Outlook add-in. So from that point of view, there's actually an add-in in the system. So you can see here Grant's the owner of a cafe. He's got a broken coffee machine. So if I receive an email from him, it will pick up who he works for. And then you can see on that, the third from the bottom, I can actually create a case. So I can create a case within the system, or I can actually log an activity against a case. And then once the case gets created, we can then talk and all of the emails get put into that case itself. Or the last bit that I'm just going to jump into on the case creation point of view is the email incoming integration. So I'm just going to jump into the system, and I'm going to just jump into the system email accounts. And what you can potentially do is you can actually set up a system email account. So if I look at my support email and look at my incoming mail processing, this allows for any emails coming in to this email account to actually create brand new cases, and also create the cases relating to this new case class. So we can actually receive an email in and then create a case from that point of view. Now, when we talk about cases, if I just jump into my cases here, so from the point of view of a case, I'm just going to drill into one. So we have our case classes, what we mentioned about before, and the case classes are a way of actually saying, right, if we have different types of cases, so if I just click on the little pencil and drill into here, so for example, for machinery, we can actually set up certain attributes, and we can say, right, when we are dealing with a new case, then what type of hardware are we talking about, what manufacturer, what is our model, asset, so on and so forth. But we can also set up different case classes. So if we're dealing with, say, for example, medical alarms, then we can actually have a different set of questions sat within there to actually flow through to that case when you're asking the questions from that point of view. So it means that you can set up those different elements to allow the client to answer them, or to actually get your support people to answer them from that side of things. Now, the good thing about that is that you can then also create assignment classes based on that. So if I just jump into my customer management preferences, so in terms of your preferences, we actually have the ability to case assignment, and within here, within this case assignment, you can see that I've set up multiple rules based on what I actually do as a business. So I can actually set up to say, right, if we receive any cases that relate to hardware, then this will get passed to Scott. If it's anything to do with software, it'll get passed through to a vet, and so on and so forth. But I can also put in different layers. So from the layer on machines, I can actually say, if it is a coffee machine, then it picks up the attribute, which is type of hardware, it picks up the class, and then passes it to Gordon. Whereas if it's to do with grinders, anyone else can do that, and it just passes it through to the professional services team. Or if you've got, say for example, a case that's already in there, but it doesn't have an owner, but has a class ID against it, then again, it's urgent and it gets assigned to Lisa from that point of view. So you can set up these case assignments to actually feed in based on how the case has been created. Now, from that point of view, I can then go in and actually assign cases. So under that support and assign, within this screen, I can actually go in and say, right, if I wanted to, I could say, right, I want to assign all of these cases, and I could go process all, and it would run through and do that. I could also add that in as an automation, so it would assign them automatically. But for speed, I'm just going to process this one, and you can see as soon as I do that, it's now assigned it to Gordon Earl. Now, what I would say as well is from Gordon Earl's point of view, he can then go into here, he can have a look at it, and then he could click on take the case, and then he takes a case, and it's now what he's going to actually do, or he could reassign it to somebody else. Now, what happens when you've actually done that assignment comes down to the notifications. So if you've created a case and then it's been assigned to a person, how do you then notify the person in particular within the organization, or how do you notify your client? So what you can do is you can set up a business event, and within here I've got a couple to set up, and I've got the first one, which is that when a new case gets created, it then creates an email notification, and that email notification looks at it's a new case, and then it creates an email notification to get sent through to your client. So in this case, you can tweak it to suit what you want to send out. So it has the case ID, it's got the status, it's got the severity and priority, and it just keeps the person up to date with the cases being created, and they know what's going on. Now, once it gets assigned, it would then go through and it would actually go and send through an email to the actual person. So from that point of view, this case is assigned to a new owner. I can then click on that, and in this case this is more of an internal type, and you can see that this, as soon as it gets assigned an owner, then it goes through and says I'm going to send a mobile push notification to the person, and I'm also going to send an email to the internal staff member. So you've got different methods that you can do, email or mobile to the internal user. And then what I would probably suggest is that once they have actually taken it and agreed to actually take that case, you may send an email directly to the client to say this is who's in charge of the case itself. Now, what we're going to look at next, so that's just the first part of the case creation and notification side of things. But what we're going to look at next is we're going to look at to do with our return orders. So in terms of our return orders, we're going to look at the sales order area, and we're just going to jump into this one here, which is an RM type order. And like I mentioned before, we've got different order types which are essentially different methods. So we've got an RMA order, return with replacement. So we've got that kind of process ability within the system. Now, the one that I'm going to use here, which is an RM, means that when I get a case comes through and it's been, we need to create a return, I can simply go into here and I can click on that order type. I can then go in and click on add invoice, and I can pick out, if the client's given me that, I can put in the invoice number, and what that would do is it would then just add in the line, but it would add it in with a -1. So it would automatically, based on that -1, know that it's a receipt. Or you could add in a line with a -1 and it instinctively knows that anything with that is a receipt. Now, from the return process point of view, it then allows us to go create a receipt. We can click up the top, but here's one I prepared earlier, and I'll just jump into this one. So from a receipting point of view, once you actually receipt the item in, you can then receipt it, if you wanted to, into a return location, and you can then say, right, we've returned it, and we've actually got it, but then we can check it to see whether or not it needs to be returned to the supplier, or whether we can actually fix it, refurb it, or whatever it would be from that point of view. So we can obviously return that into stock. Now, what might also happen as well is, prior to the return, you could even generate a document relating to that. So in here, you can see it says, please return the items to the following address. So again, think of the elements from a return point of view that you can tweak based on form design, but also based on notifications as well. So once we've receipted it in, we then ship out the new item to them. And from that point of view, if I just click on this issue, so this is very normal to what you would normally do. You'd create a shipment, you'd then go in and say, right, from a package point of view, you know, what boxes have you got, what items gone within that box. You can even put in the tracking number from that point of view. And again, it's all about then the details that are filled in there will directly go out to the client to let them know what is actually happening from that point of view. So like I say, from a returns process point of view, we can create a return order, we can receipt it, we can supply the new item and send it out to the person. But what we could also do is, from a business event standpoint, we can then actually think about what do we want to send out to the client. So if we look at shipment, for example, so when we actually receive something in, we could actually create a receipt to say, thank you very much for the item, we've received it, and then that goes out to the client. And then when we ship it, we can actually send out a shipment confirmation, which has all of those details in terms of tracking numbers, URLs, and those could go directly to the client as well. But one other element to mention as well is that we can also tag under this relations tab, we can actually tag it to a relevant case. So if I wanted to, I could actually go into here and tag it to a relevant case and vice versa. And then from an internal staff point of view, it then allows people to see what is the status of that. And we can see within here, this is a sales order, this is what it links back to. So we can kind of, you know, show the internal staff what they need to see to answer the queries of the client. Now, we can then, obviously, from the point of view, we can close the actual case. And again, going back to the business events, we could potentially, once a case is closed, we could even set up a business event to say, are you happy that this is closed? So again, it's keeping them in the loop, making sure they're happy and satisfied with whatever is going on in that process. And then, as you would imagine, all activities and everything like that would be sat under that activities on the case, so they can go back to it and check what is happening on that side of things. Now, one last thing on this area is just in regards to future improvements. So in the next release that's coming out, which is next year, there is a future improvement to this process, which is all around actually creating return orders directly from a case. So you can actually see in there that you can go in, click on the button and go create a return order, and it will actually create an RMM order for you automatically. So again, that's where Acumatica are, you know, extending it out for those future releases as well.